Welcome to the Gita in Action podcast. I'm Radha, and I'm here with our family of seekers. We're reading through the Bhagavad-gītā. We just finished the 12th chapter. Um, Last Monday, we finished the 12th chapter, and now we are moving into the 13th chapter. That's where we'll be today. Before we do that, I want to share a couple plugs here. We have Guatemala Women's Retreat in November. The price goes up, I think, in exactly, no, maybe not exactly, 11 days, it looks, or 9 days. 9 days, the price is going to go up. So if you're thinking about signing up for that one, sign up today because it will go up. And we have a few spots left. I think we have 3 or 4 spots left. So you can go to our website, consciouscollectivelife.org, and all of our events are on there. Guatemala is November 7th through the 14th. It's gonna be just tropical paradise. Well, yoga, kirtan, personal vegetarian chef, cultural activities, just all the things, all included in that one package. You don't have to do anything. You just get your airfare ticket, you show up, everything's taken care of for you. So please come with us. And then one thing I haven't been talking about a whole lot, but that's pilgrimage. That's coming up in February. So we need to start thinking about signing up for that. I think the early bird goes through August, so you can get the early bird pricing for that. But we're going to literally my favorite places in India. We'll start in Rishikesh. There'll be the amazing Kirtan Festival there. And then we'll move to Jaipur, which is just an incredibly devotional place. It will completely capture your heart. And if not, if your heart is not sufficiently captured in Jaipur, it will be when we get to Vrindavan. So it will be very spiritually uplifting and completely transformational. I can't got into spiritual life because of, well, seriously, I started getting really serious about my spiritual life after pilgrimage. Because it's one thing to like hear these truths. It's one thing to like, go to a kirtan once a night or once a week and feel really uplifted and association. But to go into this just like container where you're just immersed in it for a couple weeks, right? Pilgrimage is like a couple weeks. It really changes the game. It really it makes it so real in a way, like lived experience. It makes it really, really real. And I remember that kind of being my prayer towards the end of pilgrimage is like, please keep me as connected as I feel right here in this moment at this super spiritual place. Because that's a challenge. We get so high when we go to these places, and then we come back to our lives, and they just, before we know it, we're like, who am I? What am I doing? Um, so these places help remind us in a really big, immersive way. And if you haven't been to India, please come with us. It's probably one of the cheapest pilgrimages that you'll find without compromising on quality. We're staying in nice hotels. We're doing all the things. So please consider coming. And that's on our website too, consciouscollectivelife.org. All right, with that, let's start. Stella, will you be able to say the prayers today? Yeah? Okay.
Yes, I can. Om Jnana Jana Jana Salakaya Chakshuranmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Panchakalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you. I love how Kalachandji comes in there too. It's so sweet. Thank you both. So today we're starting chapter 13. And if we notice the last few chapters, 10, 11, 12, 13, they're all being driven by Arjuna's questions. And just to give you like a little context, Arjuna's questions don't always follow like neatly from whatever Krishna was just talking about. So it's not always like, Krishna, you said this in the last chapter. Now I have a follow-up question about it. So it's not so linear necessarily. Arjuna is really just trying to get clear on everything Krishna's saying, and also put it in the context of his reality, what he already knows. And he grew up in Vedic culture, and therefore he's heard all kinds of like philosophical and spiritual terms throughout his life. And we know that just because you've heard a word before, it doesn't mean that you really understand what it means or like could explain it to someone. This happens to us all the time. These words like soul, ego, karma, consciousness, surrender, devotion. We say these words all the time, and we've heard them all the time. But sometimes if somebody asks us like, okay, so what exactly do you mean by consciousness? Suddenly we're like, consciousness, it kind of becomes like a little hard to explain, you know? So what Arjuna's doing here is like really zooming in and trying to understand more deeply. And that's what he's doing here at the beginning of chapter 13, and what will be beneficial for all of us is he's asking for some clarification for about six different terms. So he's saying, I've heard all these terms. Now help me understand exactly what they mean and how they all fit together. And some of the terms that you hear here, you'll feel like, oh, well, I've heard that before. I know what that means. But I invite you to just stay open and curious to understanding these terms on an even deeper level. If that's you. If you haven't and this is new to you, then that's also perfect. Because this is what so much of spiritual growth is just going back to these same words, these same concepts, time and time again. And the more that we do that, it's like the opening of a lotus flower. We're just understanding things on a deeper and deeper level, depending on where we are in our life and what our capacity is for understanding. So that's what we're doing today. We're really zooming in. And where we're going to start is Krishna's going to start by answering Arjuna's question with one thing that all of us have direct experience with. It's our own body. So that's going to be the start. We're going to learn about our own body today. And that's the opening of chapter 13. So let's just get right into it and then we'll talk about it a little bit more. And Stella, are you still on camera? I can't see you here. Let's see. She's still there. Okay, great. This is the only reading that we have today. So after
Oh,
this, we will be good. Let me just share my screen. Okay, whenever you're ready, Stella.
as soon as I see the screen. Okay. Arjuna said, "Oh, my dear Krishna, I wish to know about Prakriti, nature, Purusha, the enjoyer, and the field and the knower of the field, and of knowledge and the object of knowledge." The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "This body, O son of Kunti, is called the field, and one who knows this body is called the knower of the field."
Okay, so this is text 1 and 2. And at first, this might not sound like super revolutionary, but again, let's really zoom in and try to bring this knowledge from just known to realized. Because Krishna's he's making a profound distinction here. He's saying you have a body, but you're not the body. So there is a field, and there's a conscious person experiencing the field. And the difference between the two is something that we are constantly experiencing in our lives. And to the degree that we start to really get curious and observe, and get a little bit thoughtful about what we're observing, these truths can really start to seep in to our realizations. But one quick note I want to point out before we get into like the content. I just thought this was really interesting when I was studying this verse. This is just like a little tidbit. Hopefully you guys think it's interesting too. This question, 13.1, doesn't appear in every ancient manuscript of the Gita. Because back in the day when they would print the scriptures, they didn't have copy machines. So they were computers, so they had to just write it out by hand. That was like how they would copy things. They do it by hand manually. Because the manuscripts they deteriorate and they'd need more copies, so they'd copy it by hand. And what's interesting about the Gita is, if that's how you're copying things, you would expect things to kind of change a little bit over time. But what's remarkable about the Gita is that it's one of the most textually stable ancient scriptures. There's very few disagreements about its actual content. And commentaries go back like 1500 years ago to show us that. So we have a commentary from 1500 years ago that we can compare to what we're discussing today, and they're like very, very similar. And even like secular religious scholars will say this about the Gita, which I thought was kind of amazing. Um, but why we're talking about this is that in some texts, 13.1 is not there, but our acharyas have included it because it just gives context. The whole chapter would be the same anyway. We're still the same principles, the same concepts we're getting out of it. Either way, But with having 13.1 in there, which is Arjuna's question about these six concepts, it really helps to give the context. So that's just a little interesting tidbit. For the 1500 years, the manuscript from 1500 years ago, and can compare, and it's remarkably similar, or like very much the same as what we're talking about today. Just thinking about that, amazing. People 1500 years ago were literally studying the exact same thing we're studying today. How timeless this wisdom is, and to think about how much the world has changed since then. But yet this wisdom is still so applicable to our lives and so relatable. It's really such a testament to these universal and timeless truths. Hmm. So, okay, back to the content of chapter 13, what we're talking about. Chapter 12 was all about bhakti. We remember that. That was our last chapter of the bhakti section of the Gita. And Krishna explained why personal devotion is the most direct path. He showed us how to practice it. We remember those last verses at the end. He described the kind of person that devotion gradually produces. That's kind of amazing, the transformation that happens in the heart. And so now Krishna is going to shift into a little bit more of an analytical discussion. And the engineer in me really appreciates this chapter a lot and this discussion a lot. And this is called Sankhya. We've used this word before. That means the process of analyzing material nature and breaking it down into its different components. And it can sound a little bit dry, but it's actually quite relevant to us. Because what happens when we walk around the material world is we look at its finished products, we look at the things around us, and they can be very captivating. We see like a beautiful body, or a beautiful home or a beautiful landscape. I say like that because Stella and Kalachandji are just like in these beautiful places right now, which is amazing. You know, this is like something we're drawn to, something we become like absorbed in form and appearance. But when we start to really like double click on these things and analyze matter into its basic components, we see it's a little bit less glamorous. You know, it's ultimately just a combination of different elements, earth, water, fire, air, like everything can be distilled into those elements. And none of those elements by themselves are particularly captivating. Like you don't see water and are just like, I mean, maybe sometimes if it's an incredible ocean, but you know, like these elements on their own are not so like they don't infatuating. So the idea with this is that by analyzing matter, we become less just like bewildered by appearances. And when we become less bewildered by everything around us in this world, we become less obsessed, absorbed in it, we can start asking deeper questions. Questions like, what is actually making this body alive? What is the source of consciousness? Who is experiencing all of this? So that brings us to the soul and ultimately the super soul. So ultimately the focus of this chapter is on analyzing matter and its interaction with consciousness. We're just like breaking everything into its components to understand it, everything on a deeper level, so that then when we put it back together, we're using it properly. Like it makes sense. This is amazing. This is like spiritual engineering that we're doing here today. So the title of this chapter is called Nature, the Enjoyer, and Consciousness. So nature is like material nature, everything around us. You know, the enjoyer is the supreme God, and consciousness is us, the jiva, the living entity. And we're seeing how all these different realities interact. And where we're starting is the one that we have the most immediate experience of, and that is our own bodies. So we're gonna zoom in on our own bodies, really understand what it is and what it isn't, so that we can understand how it interacts with those other components, with consciousness and ultimately relationship with God. Right? Okay, so is everybody with me still? We're going together on this journey. So let's zoom in on the body. And Krishna calls the body Kshetra, or a field, like Kurukshetra. Kurukshetra is the battlefield of which this everything took place on. So we're calling the body the field. If we think about like an agriculture field, like a farming field, a farmer has a particular piece of land to work with. And they don't control every field in the world. Like they just have control over their own field. And even that they don't have full control over. We know. Like the weather may change, the soil has certain limitations, you know, insects will come. So there's also things that are happening within the field that are completely outside the farmer's control. So our body is like that. Our body is like our field of influence. And in the same way, some things we have complete control over. You know, what I do, what I eat, what I say, how I use my time. You know, some things we don't have any control over in our body. Digestion happens naturally. You know, our heart beats without us telling it to. You know, the body's aging, whether we approve of it or not. You know, so the body is our field. And outside of that, we really don't have control. No, I can't control the weather. I can't control the economy. I can't even like make my husband do the dishes. You know, so the body is our field, and Krishna calls the body our field of activity. And when he uses that, I just love this word, you know, the field, because he's describing this particular space that we live, that we act, that we make choices, and that we experience all the results of the choices. But The body is not who I am. This body is not who I am. It's the field I've been given to work with. It's the field I've been given to work with. And different living beings have been given different fields. And this is all related to our past karma. Related to your past karma, we receive a particular kind of field with a particular range of influence. So if we think about like an ant has a really tiny field. Its body is small. Its range of movement is small. An ant can't be, well, I guess technically an ant could take the road trip that Stella and Kalachunji are taking, but they would need to like jump in their car. An ant can't travel long distances and so its range of movement's small. Its ability to influence the world around it is pretty small. We think about an eagle. He has quite a different field. If you've been given the field of an eagle, you can fly fearlessly through the sky. A fish, different field. Okay, so every living entity has been given a particular satra field, a particular body with particular abilities, limitations, opportunities. And each living being uses that field to try to fulfill its superficial desires. We all know eating, sleeping, mating, defending. This is what we're using our field for. But according to our karma, again, some fields offer this greater range of activity and influence than others. And the human field is especially significant. And it's not just because we can do more things, not just because we have a larger sphere of influence, but because our interaction with the field has become much more evolved. Remember, we are not the field. The field, it's like it's a instrument for the living entity, which is the soul. And our interaction with the field is very evolved, much more evolved than other species. For example, we can ask, who am I? Why am I here? Why do I suffer? What happens at the time of death? What is consciousness? Is there something beyond all this material nature? So that's what this field does for us. This field gives us something especially valuable, and that is the capacity for spiritual inquiry. And so this is what makes this field such an extraordinary opportunity. Other fields don't have this. My dog, unfortunately, can't reflect on this. My dog is just like, is really fixed in just this eating, sleeping, mating, defending mode. Everything he's looking at is related to those things. But for us, we can go above that. We can think, we can contemplate deeper questions because our field has the capacity for this. It's quite amazing. I want you to think about for a second about how many different versions of you have existed in this one lifetime. This can be a little bit painful, actually, when you think about your younger self. Or maybe it's like it makes you super happy and peaceful. You have your 5-year-old self, fast forward to the teenage you, to the 20-year-old you before you got married, maybe before you had children, the you before you found spiritual life. And if you're anything like me, you can look back at some of these versions of yourself and think, like, who even was that person? I was just talking to somebody about this the other day, like somebody who has friends. My husband is like that. He has friends that he's been friends with since he could like walk. And I'm not so much that. I don't still really the friends that I was friends with in high school, I'm not really friends with anymore. And I was thinking about it, like I can't even imagine, like I don't even know what we would talk about or do because I was like a completely different person then. Body was different, relationships are different, priorities are different, opinions are different. The things I thought that I absolutely needed, some I just like don't even think about anymore or care about anymore. But somehow through every version of ourselves, there is a part of ourselves that's always felt like us. Like you can look at a picture of yourself at 5 years old or 10 years old and immediately say, like, that's me. But if we get really thoughtful around this, what exactly is the same? Okay, not the body, not the mind, not the personality, not the circumstances. But yet there's someone who's experienced that same body at 5 years old. That body at 15, that body at 30, and the body you have now. So the field is continually changing. The field being our body, our mind, it's constantly changing. But the knower of the field remains the same. So this is when we, again, if we just get really contemplative about this, we see that among all the change that's happened to this field, which is a lot. Again, if you're anything like me, it seems like a completely different person, different lifetimes ago. Sometimes people ask me that, like, "Oh, you're a nuclear engineer." I'm like, "Oh, that was in my last life." I like hardly even remember what that was like, and honestly, it was only like 5 years ago. You know? So the field is constantly changing, but the knower remains the same. There's a part of you that has been just observing all of these changes as you've been going through them. If you're fortunate. If you're not fortunate, you got completely lost in them and probably full of anxiety and fear because it's scary. Everything's changing all the time. And it's scary because who we are is actually not that. We're eternal. We're eternal. We're unchanging. And so when we over identify with that which is constantly changing, of course it's going to be scary because we know we're not that, but we haven't yet realized it. And that space between that knowledge and that realization is pretty uncomfortable. It's confusing. So this chapter is going to clear all of this up for us. And this goes all the way back to chapter 2 when we talked about that the body moves from childhood to youth to old age, but the conscious person that experiences those changes continues. So it's really interesting. We say my body, my mind, my thoughts, my emotions. I just went out with my husband's family last night, and his cousins are in their 20s. And when you're in your 20s, like before you meet a partner and you're just obsessed with decorating your body. The clothes you wear are so, expensive. He had these shoes. One of his cousins had these shoes that had like a couple inches on them, so he could be a little bit taller. But to speak of just like the makeup, it's just like a whole thing. I remember that. I look at that and I'm like, oh man, I'm so glad that I don't have to be so stressed about that anymore. And maybe if you're a really mature 20-year-old or, really confidently situated, you don't have to be obsessed about that. But there's times we're just so obsessed with this body, this mind, we think that it's us. We think that it's us, and we're trying to like optimize it during that time in our 20s so that we can attract a mate because then we think that that will make us happy. And it becomes just like such this obsession, how overly identified we are with these things. So the Gita, you know, asks us to get really deep into this, understanding, okay, I'm not the body. We understand I'm not my clothes. I am the person wearing them. And the Gita is asking us to take this logic even deeper to say, if this is my body, who is this me that the body belongs to? Who is this me that the body belongs to? And once we come to this realization, we become completely set free. We don't have to spend all of our time and energy working to make money so that we can decorate this body because we think that it's me. This is such a root of suffering. So, and we often say, I'm a woman, I'm a man, I'm young, I'm old. We should understand these are descriptions of the field. These are descriptions of the field. These are not me. And this again might not sound revolutionary, but the reality is, even if we quote unquote know these things, we haven't yet realized them, or we would be much more free than we are. We'd be like liberated, right, from all of these attachments and sufferings that limit us. So understand, when we say these things, these are descriptions of the particular body we're currently experiencing. Just like you get an Airbnb and you look at the description, it has these things, these things, these things, these things. It's just a description. That's all it is. It's not who we are. We're actually something much deeper than that, because there's a field and there's a knower of the field. And the knower is the one who's aware of all of the changing designations. So this is an invitation for us to notice something that's been true throughout our entire lives that we maybe just haven't really seriously contemplated yet, to the place where it's become realization, or prayed for that revelation for it to become realization. But this is the reality. Everything about the field keeps changing, but there's still someone here who knows that it's that it's changing. Say this all People say this all the time, like, I'm 61, but I don't feel a day over 30. You still think of yourself like that because it's like you haven't even caught up with it, because that person stays the same. The living entity, the soul stays the same. The soul is unchanging. So of course it's going to be a little bit of a mind trick to even when we do overly identify, it's like, what is going on? It's so confusing. I think that all the time with my body. It's like aging now, and I thought I would never age. You think you're always going to be young and strong, and it's like, this is so confused. I don't even know what's happening to me right now, because we over-identify. So we're here to kind of like sever that. And it's a process. Unfortunately, you can't just listen to this and then you're severed and you're free. But you can participate in the process. You can really lend yourself to the process. You can really lean in, and over time you'll see, we're just like snipping those cords that are binding us, that are limiting us, that are causing us to suffer, that are keeping us so obsessed in this bodily platform that we're depressed and anxious because it's changing, and we're not ready for that, because that's not who we are. Of course we're not ready for that. So we often hear that human beings can think more deeply because we have more developed brains. You think about that. Okay, well, so I hear you, but the reason that one may say, the reason that we actually can contemplate these deeper spiritual truths is because our brains are so developed. And this is true on one level. A human brains, it gives us quite, it has quite large capacity. But again, the Gita is going even deeper than this and saying, okay, who is using that brain? It's like, when I give my little 2-year-old, 1.5-year-old, my iPhone, there's like certain things that she can do. She can actually, it's quite impressive. She can like click on certain apps that she knows she likes. But she doesn't really understand how to use the phone. Even she'll like put it up to her ear. She'll say, yeah, 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 yeah. I don't know who says yeah on the phone all the time. It's the funniest thing. But she doesn't, the phone has such great capacity, and she only can use about this much. Right? Because it's so sophisticated. Even though the device is so sophisticated, it doesn't automatically mean that the person using it knows how to use everything it can do. So it's the capacity of the tool is one thing, and the consciousness of the user is another thing. And the Gita is asking us to consider the same thing about ourselves. If we think about a computer, the physical computer is the hardware. The programs running through it are the software. And then there's the user, okay, the conscious person that's using both. So the Gita describes us in a similar way. The body is like the hardware, this field. The mind is like the software, and the soul is the user. So the body may be super sophisticated. The mind may process thoughts, emotions, memories, desires, but we should understand neither the body nor the mind is the conscious experiencer. The soul is. The soul is. The soul is acting through the world. The soul is acting in the world through the body and the mind. Just as a user interacts with the digital world through the hardware and the software of a computer. So this is for all of us to think. We've been given this incredibly sophisticated tool, our body, mind. They're incredibly sophisticated, especially compared to other species. Our minds. But what are we actually using it for? Are we using it just for like refined sources of pleasure? Just for greater experiences of eating, sleeping, mating, defending? Because our mind is actually capable of so much more than that. Our mind can contemplate these deeper questions such that our soul can shine through. Or our soul can stay like buried and covered beneath whatever programs that you've decided to install in your mind. So it's up to us. It's quite interesting. I a couple months ago, one of the ladies in our community was like in a vegetative state. It was really sad. She was getting ready to leave her body. And I remember talking to a teacher about it. And I was like, what happens, we're in a vegetative state. Like what's happening with the soul? And I think this just for some reason this set of circumstances happening was just it was kind of like an aha moment for me. Somebody's in a vegetative state. The soul is still very active, but it's like the mechanism by which the soul communicates and interacts with the world is broken. It's like their mind, like if your brain is dead, then the soul can't interact with the world. And I guess just seeing just this whole experience for me, it was kind of like eye-opening, like, wow, yeah, the body, the soul is still in there. There's still consciousness. The soul is still very active, but it can't interact with the world anymore because its mechanism by which it does that, its instrument is broken. So it's really when we start to take little steps towards realizing this truth, it really lands deeply and it really opens up a whole way of living for us. What would you do if you didn't obsess over your body, over your mind, over your emotions? If you came to really understand that, hey, that's not you, and they're just going to move like the weather. Don't get too entangled in them. If you really understood this truth, how much time, space, consciousness, how much would that free up for you to really focus on what's real and develop relationship with what's real? This was one of my realizations at this retreat I was at this weekend. I was just sharing this before class started. I realized just how self-absorbed I am all the time. Like my every thought, even my spiritual practice, I make about me. I make about me. And this is the whole point of spiritual life. It's a journey from selfishness to selflessness. And where does this start? It starts even with understanding this very basic principle that this mind, this body, it's not even me. No need to obsess over it. I'm actually the soul. And here's a guidebook. The Gita is a guidebook for remembering the soul, for connecting with the soul, for connecting the soul back with the super soul and where it actually belongs. And this is actual liberation in this world and the next. So this is why the human form of life is considered so valuable. we've been given this super sophisticated field. We should understand these bodies are incredibly sophisticated. This is like the iPhone 18. I don't think that exists yet, but it's like the highest. And it's not just so that we can become better at eating, sleeping, mating, defending. Some of us may use it like that, and it can be used like that, just like my child uses my phone to, go to the farting app. My husband downloaded a farting app. He thinks it's the funniest thing. She loves it. It's like it's like so ridiculous. My phone can do so many more impressive things than that. But that's what my child goes to because her consciousness isn't quite evolved to desire much more than that. So we can make the same decision in our own lives. We have the super sophisticated field. We can use it just to become better at eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Just like that's what my dog would do. That's what my dog does with his field. But this field also allows us to turn inwards and to question and to reflect and to ask these questions like who am I? Why am I here? What am I meant to do with this life? So there's the field and there's the knower of the field. The body is something I experience. The mind is something I experience. My emotions are things I experience. My thoughts are things I experience. So who is aware of all of those constantly changing things? This is the question that Krishna is inviting us to explore. And with that, another question comes. This is for all of us to reflect on. What am I doing with the field that I've been given? Because every one of us has been given a different field, a different body, a different mind, a different family, different abilities, different limitations, different circumstances. We have a different field. And there's parts of our field that we've probably chosen. And there's parts that we'd be like, I'd like to trade that field in. There's things we just can't change. And so much of our life is just spent wishing our field was different. If my body was different, if my mind were a little bit different, if my circumstances were a little bit different, if my relationships were different, if these things were different, if my field was different, then I would finally be peaceful. Then I could finally be spiritual. And then I could really be who I'm meant to be. It's my field's fault. I got the wrong field. I need to trade this in. But we should understand that spiritual life doesn't begin when we finally get the perfect field. Spiritual life begins when we learn to use the field that we already have for the purpose it was actually given to us. We have a body that can serve to some capacity. We have a voice that can chant, a mind that can inquire, a heart that can learn to love. In this field, it won't last forever. It's going to keep changing. Expect it to change. Do not be surprised when it changes. And one day we'll have to leave it behind completely. So these are the questions for us to contemplate today, that I want you to contemplate today. Who is the one experiencing this field? And what am I doing with the field that I've been given? Is it time to maybe pull back a little from obsessing over the field that's ultimately going to change and decay away anyway? And to invest a little bit more in the knower of the field, the one that's constantly that's the constant, that's always here, that's always been here, that's eternal. And it's okay if we get a little distracted investing in the field. We take a little road detour and we spend more time, perfecting the field than is really necessary. But understand deeply that you are not that. And sometimes the best way to even take care of the field is to stop our over identification with it. Invest in the user of the field. And naturally, that user and then that connection with Super Soul, the field will be nourished. So this is the first lesson of this chapter. When we walk away from this chapter, we should have talked about these concepts so much that we understand these six new terms, maybe not new, but these six terms that we learned in the first verse. And two of those terms we talked about today: the field, the knower of the field. The field, the knower of the field. Two totally different things. And let's walk away today with that contemplation and notice how it shows up in our lives around us when we can start to create a little bit of space between the field and the knower of the field. This is freedom. It's freedom. So this is all I have for today. Do we have any reflections or shares? Nancy, please share
All
with
right,
us.
thank you so much. What a great share, Radha. That was really beautiful. Yeah, I kept on thinking about how my software keeps on getting stuck in a do loop. Whoop, 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 whoop. Keeps on going, and how even through my life, there are times when I hit a plateau where, okay, as I'm in my 20s or whatever, and oh, I'm good now, this is fun, and then all of a sudden I go into, you know, childbearing, and it's like, oh no, now I got to look at what happened to my body. Oh my gosh, what's going on? And then go into menopause, and then you go all these different phases, and I've come to a place where now I keep on thinking my user, have to keep on thinking of, as my body is declining in ways, I'm losing certain things. Um, I have an ability to add new software that's going to be increasing my um, attachment to devotion to God, to service, and my spirit to increase as my physical limitations are increasing, which I think is it's a nice thing for me to think about. And I would have been nice to have learned this maybe when I was 20. But it's not there now, and it's easy to say once you've reached a certain level that I can let go of the fact that I shouldn't be overly obsessed by the physical stuff. But I work with a lot of people, and I see women who are in their 20s getting Botox, and I'm like, what? Just you wait, all right? Um, and so it is things that I can do for my keep my software sort of clean to get out of that do loop, is not to be too obsessed with some of the images I see in social media, and not to be um, trying to do more study of the spiritual literature, to associate with people, like-minded people that are really um, who are learning to let go of these attachments that we have. And in doing that, you get freer and freer. Uh, uh, no, it's even detaching from my control of my son, my grandson, the rest of my family, my husband, and being able to say, okay, they've got higher powers. Krishna's watching over them. Let Krishna come into their life, or it's already present in their lives. Let them realize the presence of Krishna in their lives, and let their software develop properly. So I really appreciate so much of what you've said today, Radha, and I will have to drop at 8:30. I have another call, but thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. I'm so glad that you got to share with us today before you had to go. Yeah, it's funny. It's to think of, like, we don't even have a lot of, like, we have a small amount of influence over our own fields. What to speak of other people's fields. So yeah. Thank you. Mariah.
Yeah. Hi, Krishna. Um, I love this topic today. I think it's so good. And just really reflecting on, like, we're not the body and we're not the mind. Like, I know for myself, I like to get in my mind and I love to think and like analyze things and practicing getting out of my mind. Whereas now, it turned into like overthinking sometimes. And, you said not even obsessing over our emotions. I'm always like, with my background in psychology, and I'm always trying to like obsess over like, okay, well, how do we control the emotions? How do we do this? How do we control the mind? How do we do that? And, there's all these wonderful practices out there, but coming back into Krishna consciousness is so beautiful because it's all there. It's all there, teaching us to get out of the mind, get out of body consciousness. And then our practices of chanting, devotion, it puts us in the heart. It immediately, when we really practice it, it takes us out of the mind and into the heart to where we're not overly identifying with the mind and the body. So that was coming to me today. And that's just like such a beautiful thing. And then recently I've been having this conversation with a friend over our value and this doer mentality. So it's so interesting you guys are bringing it up. This doer mentality and how it kind of stems from this. This is our conversation we were having. We were like, where does it really stem from? What's the internal thing that's really there? And it's like attaching our value to our performance rather than, seeing our value as a servitor of God. And then I was sharing like one thing that really helps me is I'm always in this mindset of like, oh, I have to go do the dishes. I have to go feed my daughter. I have to go feed the cat. I have to go clean the house. I have to go get ready for work. I'm always in like, I have to, I have to, I have to. And when you're trying to do a spiritual practice of chanting japa, it's like that is what pops in your mind first.
Mm.
So I was like, well, I listened to a japa meditation by Vaisheshika Prabhu one morning a while back, and he was like talking about this same concept, the mind always wanting to run away to all the things you have to do. And he said, you don't have to do anything. Right now, you just have to sit and chant japa. And that was really helpful. Like thinking, wow, I don't have to do anything. So when that process in my mind wants to come up of I have to, I like to tell myself, no, I don't. I don't have to do anything. I get to sit and chant japa right now. And then I also take it even another step further of I don't have to, I want to. Because then when it becomes I want to, then I can consciously choose when to do it. And when I'm in that mood of I want to do it, it changes it from a task of performance to a desire of service, at least for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so then it's like, well, I want to chant my japa. Then I want to go make dinner. Then I want to go do whatever task I have to do. Then I can do it consciously with love. And that's just something that I've really been reflecting on and practicing to help me slow down and get out of my head and into my heart and not be in that I do mentality. And it helps me prioritize my tasks, like I get to chant, I get to be in kirtan, I get to do, and then it's just sweeter. So I just wanted to share those things. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. There was a mantra that, like, kind of my meditation this weekend, we did like a 64 round day. My meditation was this line I heard that I really liked. It was, we want to move from doer mentality to relationship through the medium of the holy name. And I realized just how much I even approach my meditation in a doer mentality. Like I'm doing this, I'm showing it, but it's about relationship. And and a doer mentality is so self-centered. It's, I'm the controller. I got this. But to show up in a mood of service, just like you said, everything becomes lighter and sweeter. So and this is the gift of this field that we have that is sophisticated enough for even that realization what to speak of to be able to make that change, to consciously. It takes time, and but this body, this field is capable of that. Um, and in that, we can really live from a place of high consciousness from the soul. Yeah, it doesn't get so buried that we're just living from these default primal desires. We our
Yeah.
this field is capable of that, of shining the soul out. It's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing that it's capable of change, right? Like I see some people in my life I've met, and they don't want to change at all. They're like so afraid of change. And it's scary. But then when you realize, like you were talking about the phone, we have such a high potential, and we have to change to reach that potential. And then
Mhm.
it becomes a beautiful thing when you want to reach your soul potential.
Mhm.
Yeah. And thank God we get to change. Or what imagine if we stayed stuck, in certain circumstances and certain lifetimes, even within this life. Like, thank God we get to change, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Shraddhanjali, did you have something for us?
I was just, thank you, Mariah. That was really beautiful. And I love that. I mean, thinking about that today. Yeah, I was just thinking of a silly thing that when I had my kitty, sometimes I thought, wow, right now I'm just being an animal. Like I'm just,
Mm.
like wanting to sleep or, like she did. And I thought about that Gita, like, the animal propensities, which are also human and needful and, they have a place. But yeah, to have that distinction in your mind that we can be higher than those eating, sleeping, stuff, is even just that. Like, I don't know. I just thought it was silly. I felt like a big cat. And then I thought, wow, that's my animal propensity.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Becoming more aware of when we're there, and when it's time to really invest in higher um, and higher consciousness. Yeah. Any other final shares before we leave? Oh, Chantal.
Okay. Does it work?
Yeah, we get to
Oh,
hear from you.
all right. I was really nervous because I was like, if this doesn't work again, I'll be sad. Um, so I work a lot with Samkhya philosophy in my yoga teachings and my business. My yoga therapy is based very much in Samkhya philosophy. And I mean, really, it's based on wherever my client is and what their philosophy is. But I come from a place of Samkhya, so Purusha, Prakriti, the field, the knower. These are things that I can really resonate with. And I really am looking forward to moving through this chapter. Let me sit for a moment. Speaking of not doing all the time,
Mm.
because I'm doing, right? Um, yeah. And what Mariah said, I had a revelation a while back. And mind you, it was after, this is in a different part of my life, but it was after a mushroom trip. And I was scooping my cat's litter box. Such a mundane thing. And I had this thought pop up in my head, and it was, no one can touch me. No one can touch any of us. No one can touch the real me, the me that's in here that has watched me grow up, the me that has gone through trauma, the me that has been abused, the me that has been hurt. Although those things happen to my physical body, the field, I, the knower, can never actually be touched. It doesn't matter how much somebody does something to the field, burns it down, ravages the field, decimates it. The knower is still standing in the end. And we can take the experience of the field being harmed, so what the mind interprets as suffering, and hold on to that. Or we can let that go and we can use it as an experience for the knower, the soul, to grow, to learn something from that. So the next time, if that's something that you believe, we come back into this material existence to take this human curriculum again, we're another rung higher on the ladder. I'm not meaning higher as in we are better than, we just know a little bit more. We're a little more, we're a little closer to God. We're a little closer to Krishna because we let go of the holdings of the field. And I hope that makes sense. Now, not all of this came into my head while I was scooping the litter box. The litter box 6 years ago is more, nobody can touch me. And that's something that I have been fortunate enough to pass along to my clients in yoga therapy, and even in a mat class on in an asana practice. You are not this body. What is your body saying to you today? How do you feel? But how can you work with that, be compassionate, and move with the energy to provide a better circumstance for yourself? Yeah, so this chapter is my life right now, and a big lesson that I mean, all of these chapters are my life, aren't they? All of our lives, all the time.
That's our goal.
It's amazing. So thank you for this, and thank you, Mariah, for saying that, because that's, I mean, yeah, when you know something, when we all know something, we can't deny its truth.
Wow, really profound and nicely said, Chantal. Thank you. It's really assimilated, and thank you. Katie, do you want to take us home here? Final share.
Hi, Bo. Thank you. I miss you guys. I've been a little sleepy, but yeah, just going off, the beautiful class and also the past shares just now. It was making me think, how we can really trust that these changes in the field are good and okay, which is kind of a simple point, but thinking about like stuff changing with my body and the girls now in the 5th month, and like, some things might go back and some things are not. They're going to stay or change even more, that have already changed in a brief amount of time. And it's a little silly, but like my husband was commenting and noticing, he's like, he's not as flexible as he used to be. And he's like, I'm going to get dad bod. And I'm like, wow, it might make me feel better. But anyway, and I said, I'm like, don't just try, like, you gotta stretch, don't hurt yourself, before. And also it's okay. So it's funny, that was just last night. But yeah, it was just making me think how, like, we discuss and contemplate all these things together, which is so helpful. And we don't, like, when we first enter bhakti, we may not trust as much, right? But at least there is some faith there, because otherwise we wouldn't pick up the book. We wouldn't join the class unless we had some curiosity that comes from, like, at least a little seed of faith. And it was just making me think how, farther along we go, we take these words without much doubt, or without, having to dissect them as much as before. And that's a really nice feeling, and we can just really trust that these words are written so we know and feel better and good about, like, being different in the field and in the body than before, in our minds. And how, like, God's just saying, like, it's a good thing. It's just leading us closer and closer to our ultimate goal, of, like, coming home and helping each other with that. So that's what I was thinking about. All right, Paul.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. It's good to see you, Katie.
Yeah, you too.
Okay, my friends, I think we are over. That is our class for today. Looking forward to walking through this chapter with you over the next couple months. And I'll see you on Thursday. So have a wonderful week.
Bye. Thank you. Haribol.
Thank you.